So we're going to now move to our second speaker, who is Vaishnavi Sundar. She's from India, well-known filmmaker, inspirational feminist activist, and outstanding inspirational speaker. As those of us who were at Filia to hear her speeches or have seen them, because the Filia speeches are now up and available. So it's really well worth listening again to some of the stuff that Vaishnavi says. So also Women's Human Rights Campaign Country Contact for India, and he's going to give us a report from India. So welcome, and over to you, Vaishnavi.
Today, I'm planning to give an update about what we have been doing as India WHRC. And at the same time, towards the end, I'm hoping to give you a quick summary of the situation with regards to gender identity itself in India. Even though there were activities going on, and I was very closely working with the main WHRC team on different things, I officially set up a WHRC India chapter online on the 13th of June 2021. We did that with a webinar where we had 4 of us speak from India, and I also had a journalist from Sri Lanka give a perspective about what's going on in the neighboring country, and we were astonished to see how many things were so similar yet so different. We position ourselves as a community of anti-caste Indian women, but who are from around the world, who are standing up for women's sex-based rights. In all our communication, we don't mince words, we don't capitulate to pronoun police. Men will continue to remain men. We have never used pronouns such as she or her for them on any of our social media channels or discussions that I have taken part as a representative of WHRC India. At the moment, we are online on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. The YouTube is the same channel as the main WHRC channel. So if I produce a webinar, I upload it on the channel. So the one that you see on screen is available on the main WHRC channel. So if you'd like to watch it, it will be nice. We discussed a lot of legal and LGB perspectives. LGB perspective was discussed by Shifali, who is one of the people who started the LGB Alliance India chapter. And we also had a story from an Indian sister who was on the verge of, transitioning and then decided that it was not for her. And that will be something that you will be very interested in knowing, because everybody has this illusion that India is still somehow very, very safe from all of this. We just started recently in June, so our growth is not, fantastic, but we are getting there. Each post that we make on social media gets some form of engagement. At the moment, mostly it's from women abroad, not from India. But then there are some very turfy Indian rat femmes on social media who anonymously comment and share our rage and everything, but largely our following has been from people outside of India, which I hope will change soon enough, because with every post I feel like we are picking people on a daily basis. Our social media strategy has been very, very simple. We categorize them into the following things. We share breaking news as is, without using words that are very questioning of the victim's position. I understand that news media agencies have their press protocol and things like that, so that you see it awash with things like the woman allegedly claimed that she allegedly everywhere. So we try to break that down, and we make news as feminist as possible, where we share the information directly from the victim's point of view. We also constantly point out the ridiculousness of Indian media. Sometimes if they post something which is very ambiguous, we call it out on our social media and things like that. We also have strategized our social media in a way that we are able to compartmentalize the various issues that goes on in India, because India is a huge country. There's so many different things that are going on in different states that I have absolutely no idea about sometimes, especially places like Kashmir or Northeast, where there are things going on every day, which is very, very hard to keep track of. That's why we created, hashtags like women in conflict zones, tribal women, that sort of exclusively talks about the situation that these women are going through. So similarly, we have things like Northeastern women. And we also talk about really positive stories like women in charge, where women, some of them could be liberal, doesn't matter, but if they have pioneered in one of the fields that they have chosen for themselves, and if they have achieved something really spectacular, we make sure that we talk about it. Otherwise, our social media will just be like a very, very depressing place, which it often is. We also write blogs. We try to write it as frequently as we can, but we are a very, 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 very extremely small team, and we try to do as much as we can. What I have done is I have made the website, created an Indian link from the main website, where I have sort of collected a lot of information that is very specific to India. And we started out with writing blog posts where we have broken down the various articles and written down a blog from an Indian perspective. Like, for example, in the article 1 on the basis of sex, what does it mean from an Indian perspective? And motherhood, what does it mean from an Indian perspective, given all our additional baggages of, things like surrogacy, things like rapes and sexual violence and prostitution. With all those aspects kept in mind, we've sort of written blog pieces that are very, very unique and specific to India. Webinars haven't been as frequent, but I hope that will change. So we spoke to Uno Ishigami from Japan, and I posted it around the time where we not celebrated, but it was 100 days since we started it. So on social media, shared a bunch of videos where Uno was talking about how transgenderism has affected Japan. And I was discussing with her about the parallels that are very, very similar to how things are in India. And that was a very fantastic discussion, also available on YouTube. Then later, I also spoke to Raquel Rosario about how global North countries have completely forgotten about the impact global South will have when they pass all these rules without taking into consideration all the existing problems that women in the global South go through. That, again, it's a fantastic webinar. It's also on YouTube. You must definitely check it out. Aside from all the activities on social media, we thought we should be able to also appeal to the policymakers and try and make some changes in that regard as well. So we wrote a letter to the Social Justice Ministry when they called for public comments regarding the transgender persons protection of rights rules. We did not hear from them at all, even though we wrote a very long legal, psychiatric, and feminist expansion about the problems of bringing out a law like this, which would support self-ID and things like that. But we didn't hear from them, but then we knew that we won't. We also wrote a letter, which I think many other women from different other countries also did, to the Commission on the Status of Women. There was a call for public comments, and I represented India, WHRC, and sent them a letter about the concerns that are very, very specific to India, and how women, mostly from rich countries, sitting and taking decisions for the entire world, don't take a moment to think about the unique situation that women from our country go through. We also wrote a letter. This happened just yesterday. We wrote a letter to the National Commission for Protection of Children's Rights. Recently, there was an announcement of there being a training manual which will be given to school teachers, in which they can educate themselves about transgender children. And in that, there were mentions of puberty blockers, hormones, and surgery, and things like that. They were obviously constantly conflating words like sex and gender. We wrote a very long 10-page document, which is available on the website right now, to talk about the harms of puberty blockers, and how the document didn't bother mentioning even for a minute about the harms of introducing puberty blockers to children in a country where we already have so many problems of sexual violence of children. I also represent WHRC India and spoke to a few members from Canadian Parliament, where myself and a bunch of other women presented a case where, while Canada is hosting MindGeek in their country, they don't realize how the company has a bearing on the women in the rest of the world. I talked about how women in India get raped, and those videos get uploaded on the internet, and it's sold for like 60 rupees and things like that in rural parts of India. And if there is a rape, the first search item on every porn website is the name of the woman that was raped herself. So all those things were mentioned. Nothing happened. Canada didn't really do anything with regards to that, but the case is ongoing. So those were the things with regards to political engagement that we succeeded in doing, although with no response yet. We also have the declaration translated in 2 languages. This was hard because we didn't have the vocabulary for words like lesbian, or we didn't have 2 distinct words to refer to gender and sex. So there was a lot of problem coming up with, we had to create vocabulary basically. And some of the places we had to actually write lesbian in the language that we were translating. And in the bracket, we had to write 2 women who are attracted to each other to explain what we are talking about when we say lesbian. So those are the challenges we're already battling with. And without realizing the importance of language and law, the trans lobby is constantly trying to use that to their advantage and make changes to the law. I also created the website in a way that there are useful resources for people to see. If they want to learn more about the Indian situation and with regards to prostitution, they can click there. And if there is something regarding motherhood that they would like to read, and so I hope that this resource dump will keep expanding, and I'll keep adding more information over that. So we did also face some, online vitriol, mostly directed towards me, because earlier I had been cancelled, and everybody was like, oh, there is this organization that this Indian turf bitch has created. We need to take it down. Everybody mass report it and things like that. It is not really bad, but it is happening. It is there. So people have taken notice about the activities of WHRC India, which is a good thing. I don't really care about the online vitriol per se, but I'm trying to point out that if people are discussing about it, vilifying us, then it means that it is good, because we are doing something that scares them, and which means we're speaking the truth. The curriculum to include information about transgender children happened just a few weeks ago. But the thing is, they did not go ahead with it because it was opposed by a very fascist, very misogynistic wing of the ruling party called the RSS, complained and managed to take it down. But what they have succeeded in doing is they have managed to change or revise the curriculum for medical students. Now, this entire thing was orchestrated by a trans-identified male, goes by the name Trinetra, has sort of gone to Bangkok and spent a lot of money in getting all kinds of surgeries done. He contacted the Chief Justice and explained to him about how he is suffering immensely, and people are not taking him seriously, and the medical curriculum need to be friendly for him, because it is triggering for him when in the biology class. He's a doctor, by the way, about to be a doctor, and it's triggering for him when professors talk about female and male sex. So he had this conversation with the Chief Justice, and they managed to pull off this proposal where they are going to revamp the curriculum for medical students. If you notice over there, it says LGBTQIA plus community and homosexuals, etc. It's scary also that they have managed to convince practically everybody, like academia, now the legal policy decision makers of Indian jurisprudence, who are having conversations with people like Trinetra, a male, deciding that teaching upcoming doctors that there are only 2 sexes is transphobic, and it's triggering him when he's in the classroom. Now, obviously, this is also the same guy who's posting constant pictures of himself in almost no clothes, and has brand endorsements from some of the most popular Indian brands, also international brands really, and has received enormous amount of following on Instagram, and of course money by all these brand endorsements. Now, the transgender education in school that I talked about, one of the members who had written that document is this guy who's not wearing any clothes on the right. His name is Vikramaditya Sahai, goes by V Queer Ram. He was questioned for posting things like this on his social media, which used to be public at one point, has now become private entirely. Was asked why he is posting things like this when he's one of those teachers who children might look up on the internet to see what they're posting on social media. And the things that are written under his posts are definitely not things that children are supposed to read. So when he was questioned about that, there was an entire backlash about how this is about caste, and that we are anybody who's protesting against the Queer Ram posting nude pictures and at the same time writing course curriculum for school children It's got nothing to do with it. You're all transphobic, you're all bigots, you're all Brahminical assholes and things like that. So everybody came forward in support of Queer Ram to post nude pictures, and that is what this Dr. Trinetra is doing. UK managed to kick Stonewall out. They have come to us. They have set up shop in India in the most scariest ways that I cannot possibly describe. They are now conducting what is called as, workplace equality index, where they're trying to apparently provide work opportunities for people belonging to the LGBTQIA plus XYZ123 community. I have my suspicion about this whole thing because they took this as an opportunity, as a foot in the door, really, because there is nothing about your sexuality that is even relevant when you're applying for a job. So the only group of people that would actually benefit from things like this is trans-identifying male, when you dress a certain way and you want to present yourself as female, but you would face discrimination, or basically crying victim, really. Those are the kind of people who would need some sort of a special provision. Because let's say if I'm a lesbian and if I'm applying for a job, and if my potential boss is going to ask me about my sexuality, I would find that rather confusing and intrusive, and also harassment, So those things are not required at all. So the only kind of people that this kind of policies cater to are men. And the kind of companies that take into account such policies and welcome foreign donations and things like that is one of these companies called the Pride Circle. The Pride Circle claims to reference everything that they are doing with the best practices of the West. So basically anything that countries like UK and the US is doing, again, promoting all this woke nonsense by including gender identity as some sort of a protected class or something like that. These people are claiming to follow that to the dot and are promoting similar policies over here as well. I mentioned about the legal hijack in one of the previous slides where Trinetra is discussing with the Chief Justice and one Dr. Ramakrishnan. They went ahead and conducted an event very recently in my city where a bunch of lawyers, really older, kind of senior lawyers, and had them sit down and listen to, I think, 4 trans-identified men and 1 trans-identifying female about how it is important that gender identity and self-ID should be taken into serious account because it is causing a lot of distress and apparently people are killing themselves over this. Therefore, lawyers must take note of this and make changes to the law according to that. Like Stonewall, there are other organizations that are also coming into India with the sole intention of perpetuating gender identity. The latest one is Johns Hopkins University is tying up with a couple of NGOs in Hyderabad, and the person who's pioneering this, Sushant, trans-identified male again. So he has managed to be the face of bringing in the first transgender clinic in Hyderabad. So he claims that this is going to be a great success and people in Hyderabad who have been oppressed all along can come to this facility and seek service, which I suppose would be also talking about double mastectomy and hysterectomy for trans-identifying female as well. So this is in Hyderabad, and there are a bunch of other cities within Telangana and Andhra Pradesh that also has centers like this and private clinicians offering such services everywhere else in the rest of the country as well. The Feminist Institute and Johns Hopkins have come together to set up this trans clinic. It says that India's transgender and gender diverse community has long lacked access to affirming, culturally competent care. This past year, two transgender-focused clinics in the city in Hyderabad, created through a partnership between the Feminist Institute and Johns Hopkins University, opened their doors with a mission to change that for good. I'm speaking to a lot of parents who have girls who are as young as like 12 or 13 who are going to therapy because they are going through gender dysphoria, and the therapists are immediately affirming them and isolating them from the parents if they even as much as say things like, can we just talk about it a little more, without us assuming that, my daughter is actually my son. And the therapists are just graduates from one of these woke universities and are perpetuating the same nonsense that therapists in the West are doing as well. So this one particular therapist apparently made sure that the girl wore binders for a few months because the girl knows what she wants and the parents should not interfere in all the decisions that she's making, because then it will push her towards suicide. This is what the therapist said. In the first session, she ordered the girl to wear binders for months. With the advent of such clinics coming into India, and with the state also implementing a lot of these government hospitals which provide free surgeries for people who are identifying as trans, with just a letter from a therapist that says that you're suffering from gender dysphoria, which is very, very easy to get, because there are also groups where trans identifying people discuss which is the therapist to go to if you want immediate letter, without like going through the whole ordeal of discussing whether or not you even need it. So they have this own whisper circle, private Facebook groups, in which they keep discussing things like this and they get their way. Very young children, under 18, will still have to go through far more stringent procedures. But then there was this one case of a boy who was only 17 who managed to become a girl by getting himself this surgery. It's not like if you're 18, if you're not 18 and if you do it, you're somehow going to be scrutinized for your decisions or anything like that. It's just a number that they have put in because that's what you're supposed to do per law. I'm afraid that this seems like the end to sanity. This seems like the end to any common sense that can possibly prevail among the people who are supposed to protect children, who are supposed to be for reason and critical thinking, have completely capitulated to the gender identity movement. A lot of my friends I have lost, as you all probably know already, but there seems to be no end to how far or how fast these people are managing to spread their ideology. What has been the response to your use of reality-based language? Are you able to get onto mainstream media? No, never. Impossible. I think their only strategy with us is to just pretend as if we don't exist. So when they continue to shut their eyes to whatever it is that we say, they don't have to deal with it. And they will definitely not have anybody from WHRC India. We're not a lot of people, but me, for example, if I were to be the spokesperson, they definitely already hate me in my city and in my state. And then now the word has sort of spread out because of the social media, and nobody wants to have anything to do with me. After Dysphoric got over, I wrote to every media person that I know who has also been friend in the past life and asked them to watch it in good faith and write a review about it. But I had no response, like zero response to like the 30, 40 emails that I sent to people who I thought were my friends who were journalists.